Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. I got a bunch of email. I mentioned that I was out of town for a couple of days, went and walked the Mackinac Bridge on Labor Day. And so a bunch of email piled up while I was gone. I responded to some of it using my smartphone, but I got some great questions sent to me that would make good topics for videos. And so Jeff wrote me and said, Steve, I got a question for you. Stumbled across your YouTube channel and podcast about a month ago. Have enjoyed many of your subjects. I'm wondering if you could talk about one that's been on my mind. Part of the basic premise of a contract is that the person signing the document has seen and had the opportunity to read the document that they are signing. And that is absolutely true. And it goes one step further. And lawyers will tell you that in most states, especially I can tell you this in Michigan, but it's true in most states, one of the tenets, Tenets, the tenets, the concepts, the rules, the basic rules of contract law is if you sign a contract, courts will presume that you read it, you understood it, and you agree with it. So if you come back later and go, well, I didn't read it, well, you signed it. Well, I read it, but I didn't understand it, but you signed it. Well, I read it, and I kind of understood it, but I don't agree with that, but you signed it. So your signature is not, people think that, oh, I just put my signature on this, and it's just my signature. The signature is an indicator that you read it, understood it, and agree with it. Okay, so that's extremely important. So you're right. This is a great question because what about e-signatures? E-signatures. You're at the desk. You're buying a smartphone. This is one I've done. You're buying a smartphone, and up on the desk is a thing that looks like a credit card reader. And in fact, I think it might be. I think it might do dual purposes. And it's got some language on the screen that you can scroll up and down through if you want to. And they scroll to the bottom and go, here, click here. You click there, and they go, you'll get a copy of this. And it prints out this thing, 6 feet long, 4 inches wide. I could do the math on what the square yardage of that is, but I'm not going to at this moment in time. But if you want to impress me, put it in hectares or hectares, Hectares, hectares. Someone will do it. So with e-signatures like you find in a doctor's office or a pharmacy, that's another common example. You sign a pad that captures your signature and attaches it to your file. But the document you're signing is actually on the receptionist's screen. Now, it's also probably on the thing you're looking at or available on that thing. If it's not, they can show you the screen. But again, who reads all this stuff? And I'm being serious. It's gotten to the point where they often present you documents and in a situation that you're not likely to read them. They know you're not going to read them. They could put anything in there. For all you know, it says you're signing your house over to them, for all you know. So if you ask, the person tells you, well, this document is the consent for us to do blah, 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 blah. And it's often the consent required by law. So if you're going into surgery, they'll say, oh, you're signing a document that says we're allowed to, cut you open and do things, blah, 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 blah. And there's probably also some, disclaimers, and they're saying, this involves risk. You could die from this. I'll get back to that one. But then if you ask them, but what does this do? The receptionist or whoever's standing there will usually summarize it into a sentence or two. Oh, this is just a consent form for this. Oh, this is just a release form for this. Oh, this is just required by law to indicate that we talked to you. Well, then why does it take 18 pages on a computer screen? It must be more than that. So, and by the way, I admit, lawyers are part of the problem. Some lawyers, some places being paid by the word to write that contract. And other lawyers were paid by the hour to review the contract. So basically, I'm asking, this is Jeff, if you're asked to sign a document based on how the receptionist interprets it, is that really the case? Because he says the receptionist might not interpret it the same way I do. Besides that, she's not an attorney, and she's certainly not a judge. So when she says, oh, and by the way, it could be he, if they say, oh, it's just this, and they summarize it into a sentence and a half, is that really what it is? And does it matter? Because no, once you sign the document, all the negotiations and talk goes out the window. It's now reduced to that contract, and that contract is something that you read, you understood, and you agreed to. You got to return to those 3 points. You read it, you understood it, and you agreed to it. He then also points out there's no physical bond between my signature and the document. What happens if mistakes get made? How does my signature get linked to the document with 100% certainty? And whether I had the opportunity to read it or not. So, he goes, I'm wondering, if this is actually something I should be worried about or not. And he jokingly says, for all I know, the receptionist has a document that has me promising to buy her a car. She might. That's the scary part. So, Jeff, it's a great question, and thank you for asking. And I'll tell you right now, this is something I talk about in the context of used car purchases all day long. People call my office and they say, Steve, I bought a used car. And I say, oh, you bought it as is? They go, I don't know. I go, no, I assure you, you did. Did you buy it from a dealer? Yes, you did. Okay, do you have any documents there? Yes, I do. Look at the purchase agreement. What's it say? Oh, it says I bought it as is. Did you sign it? Yeah. Do you see a buyer's guide that was in the window says this vehicle comes with a warranty, without a warranty? Yeah. Which box is checked? Without a warranty, as is. Did you sign that? Now, you're not required by law to sign that, but many dealers ask you to sign it just to prove a point. They'll say, yeah, I signed it. They say, okay, well, you bought it as is. They go, but wait, I didn't read this stuff. Doesn't matter, you signed it. I don't agree to this stuff. You signed it. I don't even understand what as is because most people don't. You signed it. So the real upshot of all of this is if someone's asking you to sign something, you need to read it. If you read it and don't understand it, you need to find out how to understand it. And yes, that might mean asking an attorney. And I, as an attorney, am going to tell you that if you're signing a document saying you're buying a vehicle as is with no warranties expressed or implied, is what they often say, you're buying a vehicle that could blow up as you're driving it off the lot. It's your problem now. You bought it as is. People go, that's what as is means? Actually, more people argue and say that's not what it means. It couldn't mean that. That wouldn't be fair. Well, it was fair the moment you signed the document. I didn't understand it. You shouldn't sign documents you don't understand. Now, again, I'm just going to let you know because I'm a human and I think this is funny. I've got two funny contract stories to tell you. I had surgery once, and I mentioned that I've had surgery on this bone in my hand. I crashed on my mountain bike. It was ugly, but I broke that bone and had to have surgery on it. And before the surgery, I'm asked to sign this document. I can't remember if it was a long document or a thick document. May have been both. It has all kinds of disclaimers in it. And one of the disclaimers is that you're about to go into surgery or bad things can happen. You could die. You could die. I'm a young man with a promising future. I don't want to die. Please, I don't want to die. So I'm looking at this document, and I can't remember if it was a doctor or a nurse or somebody who's standing, but somebody brings this document and goes, here, sign this, So I'm an attorney, so I'm reading it, I'm going through the motions, I'm reading it. I get to the part where it goes, you could die. And something about that just struck me because I've read a lot of contracts, but I hadn't seen that in a lot of contracts. So I pointed that out to the person who handed me the clipboard and I said, it says here I could die. And she leans over and goes, don't worry, you won't. Now, I signed it. If I hadn't signed it, I'd still have a weird bone sticking out here and a bone sticking that way. But her statement to me, don't worry, you won't. It's not legally binding. Of course not. She said it to induce me to sign the contract, but if we were to go to court, at least if my heirs were to go to court and say, hey, he died, they'd say, well, that's his signature, isn't it? He signed it. Presumably he read it, understood it, and agreed to it. And you'd say, but I was there when she leaned over and said, don't worry, you won't. The judge would go, I don't see that on this document anywhere. It's not here, is it? So this is the agreement. The statement she made, out the window. So the other one I'm going to tell you, and I will admit to you that this is one of the goofiest things I ever did as an attorney. I'd been practicing law about 10 years. Went to Europe. Went to visit the Normandy beaches. I did a whole video on that. I'll put a link below. And I put the video up, and I often mention it right around Memorial Day and also the anniversary of D-Day. I walked the beach at Normandy and then walked through the cemetery on the bluff overlooking the beach, Omaha Beach. And to get there from the nearest town, I had to rent a car. I took a train from Paris up to Cannes and then went to rent a car. And I saw a sign for what was obviously a rental car company because it was the exact same logo they have in America. But it was in French. So I go into this rental place, and the woman behind the counter speaks passable English. I speak no French. So I asked the woman in English, I'd like to rent a car. And she says, that's fine. Do you have a credit card and a driver's license? I say, yes, I do. It's an American driver's license. Is that okay? And she says, yes. So I pull out my American driver's license and my American credit card, and I hand it all to her. And she goes, "How long do you need the car for?" And I said, "Basically 1 day. I'll have it back tonight." She goes, "Great." And I go, "I'm going to see the Omaha beach. The beach is at Normandy." She goes, "Oh, beautiful. You'll enjoy that." She then pulls out a contract, slides it across the desk to me, which if I had my eyes crossed just right, I wouldn't have noticed. But once my eyes focused, was entirely in French. Contract was in French. I picked it up and looked at it, and I recognized the logo, the rental car logo up here. And she's filled out the information. My name's on it, all the dates and things I recognize. And of course, all the language and verbiage is in French. I pick it up, turn it over, backside in French. I'm looking at it. I'm thinking to myself, what will I tell my students when I get home and say I signed a contract I didn't understand because I couldn't understand it? I don't speak French. So I jokingly said to her, "I don't speak French. Does this pretty much say what it says in America?" And she goes, "Probably." I said, "Okay." And I signed it. Now, I admit, bad things could have happened. And if bad things had happened because of that, it would have been my fault. I was assuming the risk that there was something crazy in that contract I didn't recognize. I was assuming the risk that there was something crazy that would happen to me if I wrecked the car or somebody wrecked the car that I was driving or the car got stolen. I was assuming that risk. But my thought was, cost-benefit analysis. I'd really like to go drive over and see Omaha Beach. I'm not going to walk there. I don't really know how else to do this. At the time, there were no translate features for smartphones because smartphones didn't exist yet. And I'm thinking to myself, what are the odds something bad could happen in 1 day? And I'm leaving the country tomorrow. What kind of problems could happen to me before I leave the country by me signing a contract I don't understand? So there are risks involved in that. But on the upside, it's a rental car company I've dealt with 1,000,000 times in the US. So I suspect their business practices in France are similar, but it's a suspicion. And I'll admit, it's the same suspicion you have thinking, well, I've been to McDonald's. How different can McDonald's in France be? And you walk in and you realize, oh, I recognize some of these items, but not all of these items. And it might surprise you. So I signed the document. I signed a contract that was written entirely in French. I saved a copy of it. I wish I still had it, but I lost it 3 moves ago. I signed the contract. I got in the car. I drove successfully to Omaha Beach. I visited the cemetery, spent a day out there. It was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had. It was one of the most well-spent days I've ever spent. And I got back in the rental car and returned it, turned in the keys, and they gave me a receipt. And somebody said to me in broken English, "There you go, you're all set." I got in the train, went back to Paris, left the country the next day. And for all I know, there are warrants for my arrest in France. I don't know, but I doubt it. So my point to you really is, I'll admit I've done foolish things like that. But again, it was a cost-benefit analysis. I thought I was pretty good on that one, but you never know. But it worked for me. However, with respect to these crazy things that you sign at a pharmacist or doctor's office or going for surgery, or the crazy things you click on when you get apps, who reads those? Same thing, page after page after page. We talked recently about that one app that says we have the right to, basically own all your photographs and use them as we see fit. Somebody finally did it. They put that in there. We now own your photographs if you use our app. People still use it. Will that change in the future? The way our processes work, it might be someone comes up with an app that's just as good where they don't say that. People might gravitate towards that one. Who knows? But anyways, that's the point. But this is a great question. So thank you for sending it. And like I said, Jeff passed that along to us. But yeah, you got to be careful what you sign. And it could come back to haunt you. So you might want to spend more time reading it. And don't let them rush you. If you want to read it and they're rushing you, saying, "Don't worry, just sign it, just sign it." Back them off and say, "Excuse me, my lawyer told me to read everything before I sign." When they hear the word lawyer, they'll probably back off. So that's how it goes. Questions, comments, put them below. Otherwise, and for all other purposes, I'll talk to you later.